Chris pushed through the last few reps on the bench press, his muscles humming with effort. Sweat trickled down his temples, but a satisfied smile touched his lips. Another good workout in the books. He wiped down the machine, feeling the familiar burn in his chest and arms. A good tired, the kind that promised a solid night's sleep. The gym was starting to clear out, the usual evening rush fading into a quieter hum of a few dedicated souls. He grabbed his towel and water bottle, a sense of accomplishment settling over him like a warm blanket. As he walked towards the locker room, the sound of clanking weights and distant chatter grew fainter. The hallway felt longer, emptier than usual. He passed a few guys heading out, their gym bags slung over their shoulders, faces flushed from their own exertions. A quick nod, a mumbled good workout, and they were gone. By the time Chris reached the locker room door, it was almost silent. The fluorescent lights hummed above, casting a stark glow on the rows of metal lockers. He pushed the door open, expecting to hear the usual sounds of splashing water or hair dryers, but only a faint echo greeted him. It was practically deserted. A small sigh of relief escaped him. Sometimes, after a particularly intense session, all he craved was a moment of quiet, a space to simply be. He found his locker, quickly stashing his phone and keys, and pulling out his shower kit. The air was warm and slightly humid, carrying the faint, clean scent of disinfectant and a lingering hint of chlorine from the pool area. He could hear the soft drip of water somewhere in the distance, a peaceful rhythm. He moved toward the shower stalls, his flip-flops slapping softly on the tiled floor. The row of open showers stood empty, a welcome sight. No waiting, no jostling for space, just an open invitation to wash away the day's sweat and effort. A genuine smile spread across Chris's face. This was perfect. He stepped into one of the stalls, turning the knob and letting the warm water cascade over his tired shoulders. The spray was a soothing balm, washing away the tension, easing the ache in his muscles. He closed his eyes for a moment, enjoying the pure, simple pleasure of the warm water on his skin, the quiet solitude of the moment. The steam began to rise, gently clouding the air around him, making the world outside the stall feel even further away. The warm water flowed over Chris's skin, a soothing current washing away the day's exertions. He lathered his hair with shampoo, the scent of mint and eucalyptus filling the small, steamy enclosure. The quiet hum of the gym's ventilation system was the only sound, a gentle backdrop to the rhythmic fall of the shower spray. He closed his eyes again, letting the hot water work its magic on his tired muscles. It was moments like these, after a particularly grueling workout, that Chris truly appreciated the simple luxury of a hot shower. He scrubbed his arms, then his chest, feeling the invigorating tingle of the soap. The steam was getting thicker now, making the air around him hazy and soft. It felt like being in his own little cloud, a private world away from the bright lights and clatter of the gym floor. He tilted his head back, letting the water rinse the shampoo from his hair, droplets running down his face and neck. The feeling was pure, unadulterated comfort. For a few minutes, he simply stood there, letting the water beat down on him, enjoying the quiet. He thought about his plans for the evening, a simple dinner, maybe catching up on a show. Nothing too demanding, just what he needed after pushing his body. The peace was almost profound, a rare commodity in his often busy life. He stretched his shoulders, feeling the last knots of tension unravel under the warm assault of the water. He reached for the body wash, squirting a generous amount onto his washcloth. As he started to scrub his back, a faint sound reached him. It wasn't the usual hum of the gym or the drip of water. It was a distinct, soft padding sound, like footsteps on the tiled floor, approaching the shower area. Chris paused, his hand still on his back, a small frown creasing his brow. He thought he was alone. The footsteps grew a little clearer, then stopped just outside his stall. Chris opened his eyes, a tiny spark of annoyance flaring. Just when he was enjoying his solitude, he glanced sideways, half expecting to see an older guy, maybe someone who preferred the quieter late hours. Instead, a shadow fell across the frosted glass door of his stall. It was taller, broader than he'd expected. A familiar figure began to take shape behind the glass, blurring slightly through the steam and water droplets. His annoyance quickly gave way to a flicker of surprise, then a strange, sudden awareness that made his skin prickle. He knew that outline. It was Evan. Evan, with his easy smile and even easier confidence, who Chris often saw around the waits, exchanging polite nods and brief, friendly words. What was Evan doing in here now, when the place was practically empty? Chris watched, a knot forming in his stomach, as Evan's shape paused, then moved. Not to the next stall, but directly in front of Chris's. The shadow solidified, becoming clearer, and Chris could now see the unmistakable outline of Evan's head and shoulders, framed by the hazy light. Chris's heart gave a little thump against his ribs. Evan, of all people, he had assumed it would be someone just needing a quick rinse, oblivious to Chris's quiet enjoyment. But Evan? Chris had always found Evan's presence a little electric, not in a bad way, just that Evan carried a certain spark, a confident energy that made him stand out. He was always smiling, always seemed to have a ready joke or a friendly word. Through the translucent glass of the shower door, Chris saw Evan's head tilt slightly. Even through the steam, Chris could sense Evan looking directly at him. A strange flutter started in Chris's stomach. It wasn't a feeling of annoyance anymore, but something else entirely. A curious mix of nerves and an unexpected thrill. He wondered what Evan would do. Would he just grab a different stall? Or perhaps he'd just be quick and then leave. Evan didn't move to another stall. Instead, his outline remained fixed, and Chris could almost feel Evan's gaze, sharp and knowing, piercing through the steamy haze. A slow, deliberate movement began. Evan's hand rose, not to open a nearby stall door, but to push open Chris's own. The frosted glass door slid open with a soft squeak, letting in a gush of cooler air and a clear view. Evan stood there, a towel slung low around his hips, already wet in places from the humid air. Water glistened on his skin, making his muscles look sculpted and strong under the dim locker room lights. His hair was damp, slightly tousled, and his eyes, a bright, intense blue, were fixed on Chris. But it was his smile that truly caught Chris off guard. It wasn't the usual friendly grin Evan offered to the waits. This was something different. It was slower, softer, and had a playful, knowing edge that made Chris's breath catch in his throat. Evan's eyes traced over Chris's body, still slick with soap and water, before meeting Chris's gaze again. The smile deepened, a silent invitation, a quiet challenge. It was a smile that seemed to say, "Asterisk, I see you." And I know, asterisk, there was no awkwardness, no hesitation in Evan's posture, only a confident, almost predatory grace. The air in the shower stall, already warm and thick with steam, suddenly felt charged, buzzing with an unspoken question. Chris could feel his cheeks flush, the heat not just from the shower water now. His heart was hammering a little faster, a frantic drum against his ribs. Evan didn't say a word. He just stood there, letting the moment stretch, letting his smile speak volumes. Chris found himself unable to look away, caught in the unexpected intensity of Evan's gaze. The quiet solitude Chris had been enjoying just moments before had completely vanished, replaced by a sudden, potent awareness of another presence, one that was both surprising and undeniably intriguing. Chris stared, mesmerized by the silent invitation in Evan's eyes. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation, but his body felt strangely rooted to the spot. The warm water continued to pour over him, but a new kind of heat, unrelated to the shower, was spreading through his veins. Evan's smile, that slow, knowing curve of his lips, was an undeniable magnet, pulling Chris deeper into the moment. Without breaking eye contact, Evan took a deliberate step forward, then another, and another. Each movement was fluid, confident, closing the small distance between them. Chris watched, a strange mix of apprehension and eager anticipation swirling inside him. He didn't move, couldn't move, as Evan stepped fully into the shower stall. The moment Evan crossed the threshold, the warm water from the shower head instantly enveloped him too. It streamed over his broad shoulders, plastering his damp hair to his forehead. The towel, which had been loosely draped, now clung to his hips, becoming heavier with the water. Chris felt a jolt as the spray hit Evan, creating a sudden, shared intimacy. The steam, already thick, intensified around them, swirling around their bodies, making the edges of the small stall disappear. Water dripped from Evan's eyelashes, making his blue eyes seem even more intense, more focused on Chris. He didn't turn to face the spray or adjust his position. His entire focus remained on Chris. The warmth of the water, which had been so comforting moments ago, now felt like a charged current running between them. Chris could feel the subtle shift in the air, the way the small space suddenly felt much smaller, much more potent with Evan's close presence. Evan was now standing directly in front of Chris, so close that Chris could feel the warmth radiating from his body, even through the curtain of water. The shower spray, which had felt like a private embrace, now felt like a shared experience, a silent witness to their unspoken connection. Water ran in rivulets down Evan's chest, over his strong arms, and down his legs, creating glistening paths on his skin. Chris could see the muscles ripple under the wet surface, the way his chest rose and fell with each steady breath. Neither of them spoke. There was no need for words. The sound of the rushing water filled the silence, a powerful, constant roar that seemed to amplify the beating of Chris's own heart. Evan's smile remained, a constant, unwavering presence, telling Chris everything he needed to know. It was a smile that promised something exciting, something daring, something utterly new. Chris felt a delicious shiver run down his spine, a thrill that was both exhilarating and a little terrifying. The water continued to pour, washing over both of them, a shared baptism into an unknown, exciting territory. The water hammered down, a continuous, hot sheet over both their bodies. Evan's presence was a powerful force, filling the small space, making Chris acutely aware of every inch of his own skin. The air, already thick with steam, grew even heavier, almost suffocating, yet in a strangely exhilarating way. Chris found himself leaning back, almost imperceptibly, against the cool, tiled wall of the shower. It was an instinctual reaction, a slight retreat that Evan seemed to notice immediately. Evan's smile didn't waver, but his eyes, still fixed on Chris's, held a new depth, a silent question. He took another step, a slow, deliberate movement that brought him even closer. Chris's back pressed more firmly against the tiles, the cool surface a sharp contrast to the burning sensation spreading through his chest. Evan reached out a hand, not to touch, but to brace it gently against the wall beside Chris's head. Then he did the same with his other hand, effectively boxing Chris in. Chris was now cornered, not roughly, but with a gentle, undeniable purpose. Evan's arms formed a warm, wet cage around him, the water from the shower streaming down Evan's biceps and forearms, then splashing onto Chris's shoulders. The scent of Evan's soap, a clean, masculine smell, mingled with the mint of Chris's shampoo and the humid air. It was intoxicating. The steam swirled around them, thick and hazy, making the world outside their immediate bubble disappear entirely. Everything felt close, hot, and intensely focused on the two of them. Water dripped from their hair, ran down their faces, and cascaded over their bodies, blurring the lines between them. Chris could feel Evan's breath on his forehead, warm and soft, despite the shower spray. He could see the tiny water droplets clinging to Evan's eyelashes, making his blue eyes sparkle even brighter. His heart thrummed a frantic rhythm, a drumbeat against the cool tiles at his back. This wasn't just friendly banter or casual gym camaraderie. This was something raw, something potent, something Chris hadn't dared to acknowledge before. The sheer audacity of Evan's actions, the quiet confidence in his gaze, was both thrilling and a little terrifying. He felt a delicious vulnerability, completely exposed under the relentless shower spray and Evan's unwavering stare. Evan leaned in slightly, his head tilting, his eyes never leaving Chris's. The space between them shrank further, until Chris could almost feel the heat of Evan's skin. The silence, broken only by the rushing water, was deafening. It was a silence filled with unspoken words, with potent anticipation, with a desire that was suddenly, undeniably, present in the small, steamy enclosure. Chris swallowed hard. His throat suddenly dried despite the water pouring over him. He was trapped, willingly, deliciously trapped, and a tremor ran through him, a shiver of pure, exhilarating excitement. The spray continued its steady beat, washing over their bodies, blurring the edges of the world. Water dripped from the tips of Evan's dark hair, tracing paths down his forehead and temples, collecting on his eyelashes before falling onto his cheeks. It ran down his strong neck, over his collarbones, and streamed down his chest, making the sculpted muscles gleam under the dim, steamy lights. Chris could feel the individual drops hitting his own skin, mingling with the water already there, a constant, soothing, yet incredibly stimulating sensation. Evan's eyes, those bright, intense blue eyes, never left Chris's face. And then, slowly, his smile widened. It wasn't just a knowing curve anymore. It became a full, uninhibited grin, stretching across his face, lighting up his features. It was a smile full of pure, unadulterated happiness, a daring sparkle that spoke volumes without a single word. There was a playful mischief in it, a bold challenge, and an unmistakable sense of deep, burning desire. It was a smile that promised adventure, a smile that said, yes, this is happening, and I want it to. Star. Chris felt a rush of heat spread through him, igniting a similar spark within his own chest. The air in the shower was thick with steam, making it hard to breathe, yet Chris found himself taking deeper, ragged breaths. His own skin, slick with water, felt alive, tingling with every drop that ran down him, every subtle movement Evan made. The contrast between the cool tiles at his back and the fiery presence of Evan in front of him was almost overwhelming. Evan's head tilted further, his gaze dropping from Chris's eyes to his lips, then back up again. The grin held, unwavering, radiating a raw, unapologetic feeling that was both thrilling and a little terrifying. It was the kind of feeling that made Chris want to lean in to close the tiny gap between them, to see if the heat he felt was truly shared. Water continued to pour, a constant, cleansing curtain around them. It dripped from Evan's chin, from the curve of his strong jaw, and splattered onto Chris's face. Chris could taste the clean, metallic tang of the water on his lips. The silence was still profound, punctuated only by the rush of the shower and the frantic beat of Chris's own heart. Evan's grin was a beacon, a clear, unmistakable signal that this was more than just a casual encounter. It was an invitation, bold and direct, to something far deeper, far more intense. Chris felt a delicious surrender begin to take hold, a willingness to be led into whatever wild, steamy adventure Evan was offering. The water streamed, the steam swirled, and Evan's grin burned, a silent testament to a desire that needed no words. A shiver, quick and potent, ran through Chris's entire body. It wasn't from the cool tiles at his back, nor was it from the warmth of the shower water. It was a purely internal sensation, a sudden rush of cold and hot all at once, a visceral reaction to the powerful connection that had bloomed between them. Surprise, like a sudden flash of light, mingled with a deep, thrilling excitement that made his blood sing. He hadn't expected this. Not like this. The steam in the shower was a living thing, swirling and dancing around them, clinging to their skin and hair. It felt like a tangible barrier separating them from the rest of the world, creating a tiny, private universe where only their two bodies, the rushing water, and Evan's electrifying grin existed. The air itself seemed to crackle, thick with moisture and a brand new kind of energy. It was raw, potent, and utterly captivating. Chris's gaze was still locked with Evan's. He saw the daring in those blue eyes, the unspoken question that mirrored the longing now stirring deep within himself. Every beat of his heart felt amplified, a drum echoing in the small, steamy space. He could feel the warmth of Evan's body so close, the subtle movement of his chest as he breathed, the way the water cascaded over them both, making them both slick and glistening. This wasn't just a moment. It felt like a beginning. The quiet solitude Chris had craved earlier was now a distant memory, replaced by a vibrant, pulsating awareness. His mind, which usually kept a tight rein on his emotions, felt delightfully unbound, swept up in the current of unexpected desire. He felt a sense of abandon, a willingness to let go and see where this thrilling, uncharted path might lead. Evan's grin widened just a fraction more, as if sensing Chris's internal shift, his growing receptiveness. It was a silent conversation, a dialogue spoken through intense eye contact, a daring smile, and the shared warmth of the shower. Chris's lips parted slightly, a soft, involuntary sigh escaping him, lost in the roar of the water. He was caught, utterly and completely, in Evan's magnetic pull. The sensation of the water dripping from their hair and skin intensified, each drop a tiny caress, heightening the awareness of their bodies. The air, heavy with steam and the scent of their combined soaps, was almost intoxicating. Chris felt a delicious weakness in his knees, a heady dizziness that had nothing to do with the heat of the shower and everything to do with the heat Evan was radiating. It was a potent mix of fear and exhilaration, a feeling that promised a wild, unforgettable journey. Evan's eyes, already bright, seemed to sparkle even more intensely through the veil of steam and water. His grin softened just a touch, losing none of its daring, but gaining a hint of tender invitation. The silence between them, broken only by the rushing water, felt profoundly intimate, filled with unsaid promises and unspoken desires. Chris felt drawn in, pulled closer by an invisible string, utterly captivated by the intensity of Evan's gaze. Then, slowly, deliberately, Evan leaned in. The movement was smooth, a graceful closing of the final inches that separated their faces. Chris held his breath, his heart hammering against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that echoed the roar of the shower. He could feel the warmth of Evan's skin, the subtle scent of his body, no longer just a hint but a potent presence. The water streamed down their faces, over their hair, mingling and blurring the edges of their forms. Now, Evan was so close that Chris could see the tiny water droplets clinging to his eyelashes, the slight tremor in his own hand where it was braced against the wall. He could feel the heat radiating from Evan's body, a comforting, thrilling warmth that seeped into his own skin. The soft brush of Evan's breath feathered across his lips, making Chris's entire body tingle. The feeling between them was no longer just a spark or a suggestion. It was strong, clear, and undeniable, a palpable force that filled every inch of the steamy shower stall. It was a current that flowed between them, connecting their gazes, their breaths, their very beings. A magnetic pull, an urgent need, a silent understanding that transcended words. There was no room for doubt, no space for hesitation. The air was thick with it, heavy and sweet with a raw, primal desire that Chris had never felt so openly, so unapologetically. Chris's lips parted slightly, an involuntary invitation. He didn't pull away, didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned into Evan's space, a silent reciprocation of the unspoken desire. His eyes, wide and expectant, searched Evan's, finding only a mirror of his own yearning. The world outside the shower stall had ceased to exist. There was only the warmth, the water, the steam, and Evan, so incredibly close. Evan's grin remained, a powerful testament to his intent, but his eyes were what held Chris captive. They sparkled with a daring glint, a challenge that Chris was more than ready to meet. The sensation of the water pouring over them was almost forgotten, replaced by the overwhelming, electrifying awareness of Evan's proximity. Chris felt a delicious wave of surrender wash over him, a complete willingness to let this moment unfold, to embrace the powerful, intoxicating current that now flowed so strongly between them. The soft brush of Evan's breath against his lips was a spark, igniting a thrilling rush through Chris's entire being. It was like a sudden, exhilarating dive into cold water, yet simultaneously a warm, liquid heat spread through him, pooling in his stomach and radiating outwards. His muscles, which had been tense with anticipation, now softened, yielding to the undeniable pull of the moment. Every nerve ending seemed to hum, alive and tingling with a vibrant energy. This warm feeling was unlike anything Chris had experienced before. Not just the heat of the shower, but a deep, internal warmth that started from his core and spread like wildfire through his veins. It was a sense of utter rightness, of finally being exactly where he was meant to be, with exactly who he was meant to be with. The surprise had faded, replaced entirely by a dizzying sense of exhilaration and an almost overwhelming desire. He met Evan's gaze directly, his own eyes wide and unblinking, reflecting the raw emotion he felt. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty in his look, only a mirroring of the daring, hopeful glint in Evan's sparkling blue eyes. In that moment, surrounded by the swirling steam and the rushing water, their eyes spoke volumes. It was a conversation without words, a deep understanding passing between them that needed no verbal confirmation. Yes, Chris's eyes conveyed, asterisk I feel it too. And I want it. Star. Evan's grin, still present, now held a hint of tender triumph, a silent acknowledgement of Chris's unspoken answer. He leaned in a fraction closer, the gap between their faces almost negligible. Chris could feel the heat radiating from Evan's skin, the subtle shift of his weight, the powerful intimacy of their shared space. The water cascaded over them, a constant, soothing curtain, yet the heat between them fell hotter than any shower could provide. The world outside the shower stall had completely vanished, leaving only this intensely charged bubble. Chris felt a delicious surrender, a letting go of all inhibitions and expectations. His body felt light, yet grounded, rooted in the powerful connection he felt with Evan. The thrill was intoxicating, a heady mix of vulnerability and bold desire that made his head spin in the best possible way. He was ready for whatever came next, ready to explore this undeniable, compelling force that had suddenly, beautifully, taken over. The air, thick with steam and the scent of warm, wet skin, hummed with an unspoken promise. Evan's face was inches from Chris's, water streaming down both their bodies, blurring the edges of their forms into one intoxicating silhouette. Evan's eyes, bright with a daring glint, held Chris's gaze captive. His grin, a silent, powerful declaration, spoke of a desire so raw and unapologetic that it took Chris's breath away. The moment hung in the steamy air, suspended in time. It was a perfect, fragile bubble, filled to the brim with unspoken wishes, bold feelings, and a thrilling anticipation that made Chris's heart pound like a drum against his ribs. Every drop of water that cascaded over them seemed to heighten the sensation, each whisper of steam a silent testament to the potent energy between them. Chris felt a delicious surrender, a complete willingness to let go and be swept away by this unexpected current. He could feel the warmth of Evan's body, a comforting heat that seeped into his own skin, even through the constant flow of the shower water. The subtle scent of Evan's soap, now mingled with Chris's, was intoxicating, a clean, masculine aroma that filled his senses. His mind was blissfully clear, free from the usual worries and thoughts, focused entirely on the electric connection in front of him. Evan's eyes, still locked with Chris's, seemed to ask a question, a silent invitation that needed no words. And Chris, without a sound, answered. His own gaze, soft yet unwavering, reflected the burning desire that had taken root deep within him. He felt a tremor run through him, not of fear, but of pure, exhilarating excitement. This was new, uncharted territory, and Chris was ready to explore every thrilling inch of it. The sound of the rushing water was a backdrop to their silent conversation, a powerful, rhythmic beat that underscored the intensity of the moment. It was a symphony of sensation: the warm water, the thick steam, the close proximity, the undeniable scent, and the electrifying gaze. All of it combined to create a feeling that was both overwhelming and utterly captivating. Evan's grin widened just a fraction, a silent acknowledgement that Chris had understood that his unspoken wishes were mutual. It was a smile full of triumph, of shared desire, of a bold readiness to step into something new and exciting. The moment stretched, full of potential, a vibrant pause before the plunge. Chris knew, with a certainty that thrilled him to his core, that whatever came next, he was ready for it. He was ready for Evan. The air, thick with desire, waited with them.